Hello and welcome to my session on the 7 rules of readability. I'm so delighted to see so many of you interested in this subject, which is very close to my heart. I'd like to begin with a quote, which I heard Andy Bound say many years ago, which was that effective communication isn't about what you say or write. It's about what people do as a result of it. And so, as you'll know, the job of a suitability report is to help clients make an informed decision. And in order to do that, they need to understand the advice. And in order to do that, they first got to read it. And so, in essence, the value of your expertise rests on your ability to communicate. And yet, very often, this is an area in which many of you struggle because it's really difficult to convey something that you have spent years of amassing all that knowledge and all that technical expertise to convey that to somebody that doesn't share it. But with a change of mindset and some rules of thumb and some disciplined practice and some support, you can actually make some pretty quick changes, and then compliants are happy, clients are happier. Hopefully you're sort of safer in the knowledge that clients do want to read your work. And I'm afraid we really do need those changes, because the bad news is that unfortunately lots of people aren't reading our correspondence. This was some research that Alex from Vouch For shared with me last November, so I'm afraid it's pretty current. And this is such a heartbreaking slide, because so many of you pour a lot of effort and energy and attention into these reports and documents, and to know that some of them, aren't being read is pretty dispiriting. So let's change that for 2025. I am on a mission to change these statistics. There are lots of other benefits, of course, to improving your communication skills, of course, to comply with the duty. When clients are thinking about, are they receiving good value for money, one of the things that they consider is, am I understanding the advice? We all want our good clients to stay with us. And if you're not getting unprompted emails from clients saying, thanks for making that easy to understand, you're missing opportunities. If you're looking to sell your firm, of course, you want those sticky clients to stick with you. If you're worried about wealth transfer, I don't know if any of you have seen the Schroders research, but it indicates that a lot of wealth is going to move to the hands of women and the children of your clients. And what they said was that women want to work with advisors that can communicate clearly, that are proactive and are flexible. And of course, no one wants complaints. And if you're able to communicate really clearly, hopefully your exposure to those and your risk of those will reduce. In terms of what to expect today, the session is being recorded. I'll circulate the recording to those of you who've registered. Do share it to those that you think would find it useful. Let's change those readability statistics. I'll take questions at the end, but I'll ask for your input as we go, and we'll finish by 12. So in terms of how we'll spend the hour, we'll start with looking at some common pitfalls that I notice people make, which fuel those statistics. I'll show you how to adopt the right mindset for effective writing. I believe that everything really starts with mindset. I'll show you my 7 rules of readability. And lastly, go over a 6-step process that can really help to increase attention, understanding and action. And you can book a call with me if you'd like to take it further. So if I haven't met you before, hello, I get really fired up with helping people communicate more effectively. I don't want to spend too much time talking about me. You can read more about me on my LinkedIn profile by scanning that code. I co-wrote the PFS Suitability Report guide and have worked with many clients for about 10 years in the industry. And that's why I've noticed these typical mistakes. So the first is, I noticed that quite a lot of people write very detailed explanations, assuming that clients are going to spend the time reading and understanding them. The second is that many of them use a lot of acronyms, those 3-letter words that are littered in our industry, lots of technical terms. And that can be partly because either they don't recognize that there are words that aren't well understood outside the industry because they're just so everyday, or they just don't really know what to say instead. Many are stuck using old-fashioned templates, which clients can perceive as impersonal. Some lack knowledge and a simple process to increase understanding and retention, and some just sort of carry on the same way, hoping that their clients are going to figure it out. So which of those, if any, or a mix of those, do you recognize? It would just help me shape the session a little bit when I know what you're struggling with. I'm going to put that through the chat. You can set it to everyone so that you can be hopefully reassured that you're not the only one. Templates, number 1. Technical terms, 1 and 4. Okay. Okay, we've got a good mix. All right, thank you. Well, I shall touch on all of them. So to remind you, effective communication isn't about what you say or write, it's about what people do afterwards. And so we've got to remind ourselves that this is what the FCA is asking of us. You know, if I send an email asking for someone to send me a reply, or if you do and you don't get a response, our email hasn't worked. If you don't do one thing differently after this presentation, my communication hasn't worked. And of course, I shall be doing everything I can to ensure that doesn't happen. And, you know, if clients can't make an informed decision after reading our writing, it hasn't worked. And this is what the FCA is requiring us to do. So let's look at how we might adopt the right mindset for effective writing. So there are a number of fundamental principles that good writing rests on, as it were. And I want to share a couple because they really help to adopt the right mindset. So the first is to write for your reader. Effective communication really is sort of contingent on us understanding our audience. So any professional writer will have a very clear understanding of who they're writing for. So how do we do this? So the first is really to hold them in your mind when you write. Hold them in your mind when you write. That will help you choose the right words, strike the right tone, work out how much detail you want to include. Hold them in your mind when you write. The second is then to write from their point of view. So what I mean by this is when we write from our reader's point of view, we convey more meaning, and that results in more action. So as an example, I live in Bristol, and a number of years ago, they developed the docks. They moved them from empty warehouses into high-end flats. And yet this was the developer's office. So as a passerby, does that sign mean anything to you? I'm willing to bet it probably doesn't. And so you would carry on walking past because marketing suite doesn't mean very much to you because it's been written from the perspective of the developer. If it had said show home, you would then go, okay, I know what that means. I can go in and have a look, see if I want to live here. Purple Bricks have just done a similar thing. They've changed their signs away from for sale to own it. So as we're walking past, we can think to ourselves, would I like to own it? So you can see when we communicate from our reader's perspective, we're going to get the action that we're asking for, or the attention. So here's a typical heading I see quite a lot in reports. How might you show home this? How might you translate that into something that your reader would understand so you would communicate from their perspective? And you can use the chat to do that. Plan. Not bad. What I would say, helping you save tax, great, great, good. Got some nice examples coming through. What I would say, similar to what many of you have suggested, is your tax saving plan. That's something that's relevant to us. That's something that we're interested in. We'll pay attention to that. So a quick win is simply to use you and your, as many of you are doing. For example, where will your money go rather than asset allocation? Or if you didn't want to be so informal, where will your money be invested, or your allocation of assets? So number 2, write so that your reader can fly through it. And this is because we have become a nation of skimmers, not readers. And I recently read a book by Johann Hari called Stolen Focus. And in it, he includes some research that indicates we can't really pay attention for more than 3 minutes now without getting distracted. And that's really worth bearing in mind, because we've got these 3-minute windows in order that we have got to capture and then maintain their attention. Our attention is being fractured, and we have to really bear that in mind when we're writing. 3 minutes, it's the time that it takes to boil an egg. So let's move on to the rules of readability, because this is where they sit. Number 1, start with what your audience cares about, with what your reader cares about. That's what they'll pay attention to. That's where their attention is highest. So, for example, to maintain your income, to reduce your tax bill, to make sure that those that you care about, ... Rule number 2, choose your words carefully. So this is why it's so important to hold your reader in your mind. And when you're choosing your words, especially when you're wanting to strike the right tone, and you'll all probably have different tones in your firms, but try and use normal words, not formal words. This funny thing happens when we start writing and we want to sound professional. It's almost as if we're wearing a bowler hat and we start using words like sufficient or commence, and they're just not words that we would actually say. So use normal words, not formal words. And when it comes to choosing words to convey concepts, the rule of thumb I'd love you to take away is use concrete words rather than abstract words. So keep it vivid and not vague. I'd like to share a word with you in a moment, and I want you to let me know what the words that you associate this word with. So if you wouldn't mind closing your eyes, and when I say the word, say the first thing that comes into your mind in the chat box. The word is seaside. First thing, yeah, great. Beach, sand, lovely. Good. Next one, crystallized. Rock, diamond, gems. So funny, isn't it? Because in our industry, that means something so different. But many people, when I ask them this question, they think of crystallized ginger. So they think of, as you did to begin with, making something solid. And yet often we will be using this sort of terminology in our reports and in our conversations. So this is Caroline Stewart's translation. We understand what income and we understand what savings are. So let's use words that people understand. When you're thinking about which words to use and you perhaps haven't met the reader or you don't know much about them, the safest route to go is come down the ladder of abstraction. So the ladder of abstraction is something that we climb up when we become an expert. We become, very interested in nuance and complexity, and these words that we use pack a lot of meaning for us at the top of the ladder. But to someone that's inexperienced or someone that's a novice, we have to keep things very concrete so we can examine pounds and pence with our senses. And that's the mark of a word that's concrete. Can we imagine it with our senses? And so it's safer when you're thinking about how do I communicate so this person actually understands what I'm saying, come down the ladder of abstraction. Quick recap, use normal words, not formal words, and keep those vivid, not vague. Rule number 3, simplify your message to remove the heavy lifting of comprehension. We mustn't make our readers work hard. They just won't stay with us. And this isn't about dumbing down. It's really about respecting that bandwidth, that narrow bandwidth that our readers have got. And so this is really about us thinking deeply in order that we can write simply. I think a lot of writing gets a bit muddled and confusing when we haven't worked out what it is that we actually want to say. So here's a quick exercise. How might you improve this sentence's readability, given what you know now? Any income drawn will be taxable. Yep. Your income withdrawal will be taxed as income. Yep. Once you've taken the tax-free part, the rest is taxable. Good. Any money that you take out will be taxed. Lovely. Are you all doing brilliantly? Lovely. And this is what I said. The income we recommend you draw from your pension will be taxed at. So I'm starting with what the reader cares about. I would then explain what the marginal rate is. I see this term quite a lot, and I think people don't really understand what the marginal rate is. So make it super easy and super clear as to what this advice means. Good, you're all doing very well. So rule number 4, keep one idea per sentence. Don't make your readers hold on to a lot. Don't ask them to hold too much. Their brains are already full and we don't want to further tax them. So often I will see a lot of points being crammed into a sentence, and try and strip those out. You want to keep your sentences fairly short, but vary the length of them so that you've got some rhythm in your writing. You want to keep your paragraphs bite-sized as well. So try and ultimately, we want our reading to be rather like eating a pot of Pringles. You know, once you've taken one, you just can't stop because it's really easy to just keep on going. Number 5 is to bring your information to life. So use metaphors if you're explaining things in conversations. Use diagrams, use tables, use examples. I've been having a bit of a play around with the AI tool Napkin to help me come up with some diagrams, and it's been great so far. So yeah, I know that creating diagrams isn't necessarily in all of our skill sets because we haven't had any training, but I think AI can help in this regard. The other thing I just wanted to share here is, again, in that vouch for research, that 1 in 6 people don't understand the fees. So if there's anything that you can do to clarify, yes, Napkin is free. I'm not associated with them in any way, by the way. Yes. Yes. So could you create a diagram, a table, just to show where their fees are going, and I think that would help to communicate those more clearly. Number 6 is to edit. A lot of words are used unnecessarily and can really clog up someone's understanding and can really sort of slow up the process of reading. So we have to remember that more value doesn't equal more words. And I think editing really is an overlooked skill. I think really we have to realize that a lot of editing is down to how you think about something. So it's not just about writing, it's about how you think about something. And I love what Dr. Seuss says, you know, the writer who breathes more words than he needs is making a chore for the reader who reads. So can you learn to strip back and pare your message down so that your reader can just glide through it? And the last rule is number 7, which is to use white space. It really is your friend. And I know that there is a lot of concern about how long reports are. And because of that, I think people want to then cram a lot of information onto a page. But I think that doesn't work in your favor, because if you place a wall of text in front of somebody, they just won't come with you. They'll be back to Netflix or TikTok or going to take the dog for a walk. If you were faced with something like this, what would you do? What's your impression of that document? Yeah, really boring. I mean, I feel tired just looking at that. And yet, someone's poured a lot of energy and attention and effort into that. So we've got to think about our layout as well. I like to think that the white space is a bit like a breath in a conversation. We don't want to feel like we're blowing a hairdryer in someone's face. We need to make sure that they feel like, oh, this is a really enjoyable process. So, as I mentioned, hopefully those rules are fairly simple to apply. They're not necessarily difficult, but they can make a big difference. So I'd love to get your sense of which of those do you think you will apply. Number 2, choose your words. Oh, good. We've got lots of 2s. Great. Great. Well, of course, readability is one thing, but helping clients to understand the advice is another. And I'm afraid just following the rules won't make much difference if clients aren't actually opening the letters and reports and emails in the first place. And so this is why I just wanted to show you this process that I've come up with, which really is designed to increase attention and understanding and action. And if you do, you can get results like Gareth. So Gareth was frustrated that his templates weren't as client friendly or as concise as he wanted them to be. He hadn't even finished going through the 6 steps when he received an unprompted email from a client saying, thanks for making that so easy to understand. And he'd been in the industry for quite a while and had never received an email like that. So the Communicate for Impact program is what I teach. We start with attention. We look at your subject lines, we look at your headings, just to make sure that you are going to grab that attention in the first place. We then look at action, so how you frame your requests so that you're not having to spend loads of time chasing and following up, which is a big waste of time. We then look at articulate, so how do you convey technical concepts so that clients understand them first time? We then look at editing, so how do you strip out what's unnecessary? How to then make it look good on the page, and then how to assimilate all of that so that you set up good habits for long-lasting success. Charlotte's firm had been through it. She'd been struggling to get hold of a really valuable client for a while, I think, and applied what she'd learned in the action module and got a response the next day. So other results include greater efficiencies, more confidence. I've designed it in such a way so that you'll get the results that you're looking for. So if that's of interest and you'd like to book a call to find out a bit more, I'd like to see if you're a good fit. Do scan that code. Essentially, it's 6 self-paced modules, which are all followed up with a call, so I can make sure that you understand what we're talking about and it really sort of brings the material to life and keeps up that momentum, keeps you accountable. There are 5 short assignments, so I'm reassured that you can actually use what I'm talking about. Onboarding starts next week, and the first deadline is the middle of February. I've got a few spots left. I'm happy to take up to 2 per firm. If you'd like me to run this in-house for you, I'm happy to do that too. Takes about 3 months to complete. We keep up the momentum, but we're going to avoid the end of the financial year. and all of that for the princely sum of £132 a month. So book a call if you'd like to talk about that in any more detail with me. And yeah, I want to just recap what we've covered. I wanted to keep quite a lot of time for questions, because this can generate quite a lot. Those common pitfalls we talked about, hopefully you can recognize them now. Often it's that the explanations are too long. They include too many unfamiliar words, too many abstract words, acronyms. Often the templates are rather impersonal, which clients can find, just not that tailored for their circumstances or to their understanding or to their attentional bandwidth. Often people don't have a process, and so many are just sort of hitting and hoping for the best. Hopefully you can now adopt the right mindset for effective writing, so you can write for your reader. Remember, I think a lot of us have grown up with thinking that we need to write with compliance front and center. And I'm of the opinion that if you write for your reader, then compliance will take care of itself. As a general rule of thumb, of course, you've got to include the right things for compliance. But essentially, I think we need to shift the focus to be focusing on what they understand. Hold them in your mind. So write from their perspective. You can hopefully now apply my 7 rules of readability. So start with what they care about. That's how we'll grab their attention. Our attention is highest at the beginning of a report, at the beginning of a conversation, at the beginning of a presentation. So that's what we want to captivate that, so that we then maintain it going through. Choose your words carefully. And of course, this rests on your ability to understand what level your reader's at. If they are very experienced, then that's going to shape how you choose your words. And yet I think a lot of people are worried, certainly a lot of firms are worried about patronizing their clients and dumbing things down. And yet, in my experience, don't necessarily pay enough attention to using words that everybody can understand. Simplify your message. Try and really pare it back just to the absolute essentials, because I think sometimes we can get very enthusiastic about everything that we know and forget that we are not teaching them to qualify for a level 6 exam. We just need to give them the right information so that they can make that good decision at the right time. Keep one idea per sentence. So don't overload your reader's brain. You remember, readers are really busy. They're lazy. They're busy and lazy. Some of them are got reduced capacity because they're in vulnerable circumstances, in which case the communication's got to be really crystal clear. Bring your information to life through metaphors and examples and diagrams and tables. Edit. A lot of these rules of readability are about editing, so hopefully you can sharpen those editing skills you've got now. Use lots of white space. Let your key points breathe. It's really important that our documents look good in order that they work well. And recognize, and now you can recognize the 6-step process, which is my Communicate for Impact program. We're focusing on attention, action, articulation, acts, assemble, and then assimilate. So do book a call if you'd like to ask me anything that I've covered, or if you'd like to find out more about the course. And now I've got plenty of time for questions. So you can do those through the Q&A, or you can do them through the chat, whichever you would prefer. Monica, you've got your hand up. I'm not going to be able to unmute you because it's a webinar. So jot it through the chat or the Q&A, and I can help you, hopefully. Oh, no problem. Okay. Does anyone have any questions they would like me to address? I realize I've gone fairly quickly through that. So if you would like the recording, and you can, I'll circulate the recording so you can watch it again. Paul says, are you suggesting the language used in reports should be tailored to each client? I think what I'm suggesting is that you should try and understand the level of the client's understanding. So if your reader is someone that has been investing for many years and understands terms and is very familiar with funds and equities and crystallization and understands that, then great, use those terms. But I think if you're writing a report for somebody that doesn't have a wealth of experience, we are being asked to communicate so that you understand. So yeah, essentially I am saying we need to tailor what we are writing so that they understand. And that's what the regulation is asking of us. So it's using whichever language they understand. Okay, lots of questions. Advisors don't always want to join us on this journey. How do we convince them? I think this is why I'm so delighted that Consumer Duty has come in, because ultimately we have to demonstrate that the client understands. And so I guess my point, if you're getting resistance to changing and writing in a way that's clearer, could you just ask the advisor, how are we going to demonstrate understanding? There's lots of different ways that that's being done. So I think ultimately that's the regulation is asking for us to communicate in a way that clients understand. So just don't think you're going to be, advisors aren't going to be compliant if people can't understand what they're saying. I think the other thing that sometimes people forget as well is it's not just the FCA, it's also the Financial Ombudsman Service. So that is made up of a whole range of people that aren't necessarily in the finance sector. So if a complaint is lodged with the FOS and the writing is quite dense, and like some of those examples I showed earlier, if someone in FOS can't understand it, or there hasn't been a lot of effort made to translate a lot of the terminology, then it's likely that that complaint will be upheld. So it's not only the FCA that we need to bear in mind, it's also the FOS. And FOS are made up of lay people who would look at it and go, do I understand this? How do you generally tackle holding the reader in your mind if the person doing the write-up doesn't know the client? Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one I get quite a lot. So I think, as an example, if you're an outsourced paraplanner, or if you just not met the client, could you encourage your advisors to record the meeting if it's a virtual meeting? Because then you get a sense of the human being behind the facts and the figures and the files. And I think that can really help to write so that you understand that this is the person who the advice is for. And I think that can really just put a human face to your writing. I think if you don't have that, then you could potentially just ask a bit more information about your advisor. So, what kind of person are they? What do you think they're worried about? What stage of life are they in? And then you could maybe imagine someone that that is at that stage of life. So you're just making sure that it's got an approachable, friendly, human tone to it, rather than feeling like this is a faceless person and I'm wearing my bowler hat and I'm writing away and I've no idea who this is for. So I think communication ideally needs to be a little bit sharpened between the advisor and the paraplan in terms of what is this person like? Do they want a lot of detail, or do they just want to keep things pretty top line? I think, when I've done research firm sort of customer service surveys for clients, a lot of the feedback that they get is, well, the particular firm that I did it for, their clients were business owners. And business owners are so busy, they're really big picture thinkers. They don't want a lot of detail. And that was the thing that came through loud and clear. just want to see, are they on track? Have we got enough? If we haven't got enough, what are we going to do about it? They're the key things that the clients were interested in, less interested in the big weighty reports. And I think just on that, a lot of clients and firms are worried about talking about fees and how much they charge, and they don't worry enough about how much time they're asking their clients to pay in reading the lengthy documents. So I'm a big fan of trying to keep it top line, coming up with an executive summary which has got the key information. Here's the 3 things you need to know, just keeping it as top line as possible, and putting a lot of the detail in the appendix. Sorry, I've got lots of questions here. Right. Is there a risk of removing industry terms if complaint arrives further down the line? E.g., could the regulator accuse us of not explaining correctly, even if what we have written is clear and correct, just without those terms? I mean, I guess that's I'm not from compliance, but I think ultimately what we have to be clear on is, what is this advice enabling them to do? And then if you wanted to say, if you'd like to read more about this concept, you can do so here. So you're giving people the advice in terms of what they should act upon, what the key message is, but then you're signposting to, if you'd like to read more about this, it's on page 6 of the appendix as an example. So you're making it super clear where they can get more information. If you wanted to say, for example, we call this compounding, or we call this crystallization in our industry, then you could do it like that if you wanted to. But yeah, that's probably how I would tackle that. Would you recommend a different medium to accompany a report that explains? Yes, that explains the report, such as video recording. Yes, I would. And I know that some of you are using Loom recordings, which I think is just brilliant, both in terms of first meetings and annual reviews, because a lot of us struggle to read and find it much easier to listen to somebody or to see somebody's face and just to say, great to meet you. This is what we talked about. This is where it's going to leave you. I'm going to send you a report so you've got the information, but these are the top line things that you need to do now. And this is where, this is what we discussed. So I think I'm a big fan of you using something like Loom. It's free to use, and it does require you to be flexible in your communication. But I think your clients will really thank you for it. I think it will mark you out as different in the industry. But ultimately, ask your clients what they prefer. If you've got some really important clients that you really don't want to lose, asking them, do you like the long reports? Would you prefer something shorter? Would you like us to send you a video summarizing what we talked about? Tailoring your response will stand you in good stead if you've got the capacity to do that. And it says, we've cut down the main body of the suitability report and put a lot more compliance text speak in the appendix. Yes, great, Kenneth. I think your clients will thank you for that. Is it best to replace normal terminology completely, or take a blended approach, clear wording with readability in mind? Yeah, followed by the industry term in brackets. I think that could be a good halfway house, certainly, Jamie, to make sure you're writing in a way that's very readable, and then you can use the terminology in the brackets. I think the benefit of doing that is when your clients are reading, the key features documents from some providers, they'll use that terminology. So at least they understand what that means. So yes, I think that could be a good halfway house. We try and summarize the advice and what action is required by the client at the very start of the report, so the client gets the headlines quickly. Brilliant, Angela. I think that's a good practice. We do an executive summary diagram with balloons showing what they've currently got, then arrows to new balloons where everything show where everything is going to end up. Great. You know, we have an enormous amount of our brain cells are responsible for our visual field. So that's why diagrams and visuals are really good for us. Matt says, if someone says, thank you for your comprehensive response, is this a positive or a negative thing? I guess I think, I don't know your client, but I guess that would be a positive thing. Yeah, I don't know whether they're being sarcastic or not. It's difficult to say if it's written, but I would imagine that's a good thing. You could follow that up, which is probably what I would do, and say, by comprehensive, do you mean that was a little too wordy, or are you comfortable with the level of detail that we're sharing? So you could say, you know, some clients don't want us to be as comprehensive and others do. So you could just try and, you know, ask them what they actually mean by that. So do we have any more questions? Do you have any tips on creating professional looking diagrams that could be tailored to advice being given? Drawing tools in words aren't great. Yes, well, I've been playing around with Napkin, which is what I mentioned. And I found it to be quite useful. The other tool that I used a little bit previously was Google Draw. So that was quite simple to use. I know that PowerPoint has quite a few functions on with diagrams. So yes, that's quite good. Canva can be quite useful as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot out there. The other thing you could do, of course, is work with a freelance designer, and they can just tailor everything to your needs, as long as you give them a free brief, either or at work, or you know, I've got a freelance designer that I work with that I'm sure I could put you in touch with if you like. So yes, I think the more diagrams that we include, the better. Chasing people for response if you have not heard back from them is sometimes feels rude. Yes, Matt. Well, this is what I cover as part of the action module, because I think very often we get frustrated that it seems like we care more about people's financial futures than they do. And this is why understanding a little bit about psychology and what drives people and moves people towards and moves people away from really helps on your framing requests. So yeah, one of the things you want to do is sort of think about is lay out the consequences of them doing the action or not doing the action, and that seems to do the trick. Yeah, I mean, I talk about this quite a lot in the ACE Your Annual Review product that I've got, because a lot of firms are getting stressed that clients aren't responding to their review letters, and everybody needs to have a review within 12-month period. And I think the thing not to say in that example is, we need to meet you within a 12-month period because it's the regulation. Clients don't really care about that. Clients care about how is their life improving as a result of the meeting. So we've got to try and frame what we're asking them to do in a way that they care about and that will pay attention, and that they'll pay attention to. When using AI tools, do we need to quote them as a source or anything? It's a good question. I know that there is a FCA workshop coming up quite soon about AI. Mel Holman is going to attend that, and I think we'll probably run a session on it from CATS. Mel Holman is from CATS. Many of you will know her. So I'm not totally sure about that. You might say we generated this using Napkin. Maybe there's someone on the call that could give you a definite answer on that. But I think, yeah, having an exploration, as long as you're only really using the AI to help you create the diagram. It's not like they are predicting anything, or essentially it's just I'd like a diagram to show this. So I don't think there would be a problem with it. Any more questions? This has been really great. Thank you. Do you think there is more value to speaking to a client over the phone than emailing? Yes. Well, again, it will depend on your client. So, as an example, I would always encourage firms to call their client before an annual review to say something like, what would make this a valuable use of your time, so that you understand what they're worried about, what they want to talk about, and then you can shape the agenda accordingly. I think if you're struggling to get, or if you're worried that your reports aren't being read or your correspondence isn't being read, phoning your client to say, just so you know, your report will be with you in a couple of days. These are the top line things that you want to pay attention to. As we discussed, I just want to make sure that I've been as clear as possible. So I think if you've got time to do that, it's really, really good practice. I think your client feels special, they feel valued, you're catering your communication according to what they need. You're more likely to get the action that you want. So I realize that lots of you have got big caseloads, many, many clients, and that's impossible. And yet, I would say if you're then having to spend time chasing and cajoling, it's probably better to spend the time being a bit more proactive, so that you have to spend less time chasing. My Microsoft Vislo is good for drawing diagrams. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Brilliant. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'll stop there. Thanks so much for your engagement. I hope you found that useful. I hope you'll be able to use some of those tools. And yeah, if you'd like to take it further, then I look forward to speaking to you soon.